I never imagined I'd be sharing this story, but here I am. They say everyone has their own version of events, and this is mine. I'm Amy. I'm 28, and honestly, looking back, I'm still unsure if I should laugh or cry about how things unfolded. Picture this. 3 years ago, I was at the local pub for their weekly quiz night. My friend practically dragged me there, insisting I needed to get out after my last relationship ended. That's where I met Peter. He wasn't exactly the textbook definition of handsome. He had this slightly lopsided smile, his ears stuck out a bit, and well, let's just say he wasn't sculpted like some Greek god. But something about him intrigued me. Maybe it was how effortlessly he made his friends laugh, or the fact that he didn't seem to be trying to impress anyone. He was just genuinely himself, a refreshing change from the guys I usually dated who were obsessed with their gym selfies and subtly bragging about their careers. Peter was 34 and worked as a mailman for USPS. It wasn't the career path I'd envisioned for a future partner, but he had a way of making it sound incredibly interesting. He'd tell these hilarious stories about the people he met on his route, doing all these different voices and impressions. I found myself genuinely looking forward to his stories, even the ones I was sure he'd told me before we officially started dating. It was comforting, different, and honestly, very nice. Our ideal date night usually involved ordering takeout and playing board games. He always let me win at Monopoly, which I always pretended not to notice. Sometimes we'd spend entire weekends binge-watching shows, and he'd make these eerily accurate predictions about plot twists. I'll admit I wasn't always completely truthful with him. When he'd ask about my past relationships, I'd exaggerate the drama or play up the bad qualities. Or, if he noticed a new dress, I'd casually say I'd had it forever. Small fibs, nothing serious, just little white lies to make things easier. The proposal wasn't this big, elaborate spectacle. He asked me during one of our game nights, hiding the ring in the Monopoly box. At first, I felt a twinge of disappointment that it wasn't more traditionally romantic, but then I told myself it was perfect because it was so us. I kept to myself that I'd been dropping hints for weeks about wanting a restaurant proposal. The wedding planning, that's when things started to become complicated. I had this vision of a perfect fairy tale wedding, but Peter kept bringing up budgets and being practical. He didn't quite understand that every bride deserves her dream day. So I got a little creative with the finances, opened a new credit card or two. It wasn't a big deal, I told myself. We'd figure it out later. The wedding ended up being smaller than I'd initially wanted, but I told everyone that we'd chosen something intimate and cozy because we were saving for a house. That wasn't entirely the truth, but it sounded better than admitting that Peter's mailman salary couldn't support the wedding I'd dreamed about since I was a little girl. Looking back, I can see how some things might have been warning signs, I suppose. Like how I'd get defensive when Peter would casually ask about shopping bags in my car, or how I'd delete online purchase confirmation emails before he could see them. But at the time, it just seemed easier than dealing with his lectures about budgeting and living within our means. Don't get me wrong, we were mostly happy. Peter had this incredible ability to make me laugh even when I was furious with him. And yes, sometimes I'd find myself wishing he'd dress a little sharper or maybe hit the gym. But then he'd do something incredibly thoughtful, like bring me my favorite coffee before my morning classes at the middle school where I taught, and those thoughts would just fade away. His family seemed to really like me, at least in the beginning. His mom especially was always inviting us over for dinner, trying to teach me her recipes, which, between you and me, weren't all that great. But I smiled and pretended they were amazing. She'd share these stories about Peter as a kid, and I'd see that same goofy, crooked smile in all his childhood photos. I genuinely thought we had it all figured out. Sure, maybe we weren't the picture-perfect couple that you see on Instagram, but we were real. At least that's what I kept telling myself. If I'd known then how everything would eventually fall apart, well, maybe I would have done things differently, or maybe not. That's the tricky thing about hindsight. You never really know, do you? Things started to shift, I think, about a year into our marriage. Peter got this promotion at work. Route supervisor was on the horizon, and suddenly he was completely focused on securing our future and building good habits. Which is fine, okay, I get it. But did that really mean we had to track every single penny? He'd see a target charge on our statement and start asking questions like he was some kind of financial crimes investigator. It was absolutely exhausting, and I'll be honest, seeing my teacher friends posting about their weekend shopping sprees or fancy dinners while I had to justify buying new supplies for my classroom, it really stung. As a teacher, I felt appearances mattered. It felt like I couldn't wear the same outfit twice in a week. The kids notice everything. So, yes, I started keeping some purchases off our shared credit card, putting them on my own. It wasn't exactly lying, more like maintaining my independence, a sense of control. His family didn't make things any easier, especially Sarah, his sister. Being an accountant, she always seemed to think she knew everything about money. She'd drop these little comments during family dinners like, "Oh, must be nice to spend so freely," or, "Have you guys started that emergency fund yet?" It was intrusive. It felt like she was judging me. I started making excuses to miss those dinners, telling Peter I had papers to grade or after-school meetings. Sometimes he knew I was lying. I could see it in his eyes, but he wouldn't confront me directly. He'd just get this look, a disappointed little half-smile that made me feel worse than if he had actually yelled at me. Peter never really got angry. He just got quiet, which was somehow so much worse. When he found the first hidden credit card statement, he didn't blow up the way I expected. He just sat there at our kitchen table staring at it with this wounded look and asked, "Why didn't you just talk to me?" As if it were that simple. He would have launched into a lecture about budgeting and responsibility. I started spending more time with my work friend Jessica. She understood. She got that sometimes you need to treat yourself, that life's too short to nickel and dime everything. When I told her about Peter's reaction to my shopping, she suggested it sounded like financial abuse. It definitely got me thinking. Was Peter trying to control me through money? He said he was trying to protect our future, but was he just trying to keep me dependent on him, to trap me? The more I thought about it, the more I started noticing other things too, like how he never wanted to try any of the new restaurants I suggested, always saying we should cook at home instead. Or how he'd wear the same 3 polo shirts to family functions, even though I'd bought him nicer clothes. It was embarrassing. My coworkers' husbands always looked so put together, and then there was Peter with his crooked smile and dad bod, talking about his mail route like it was some amazing adventure. I loved him. I really did. I still posted about our relationship online, carefully angling the photos to catch his good side, writing about how lucky I was to have such a caring husband. But something was shifting. Every time he questioned a purchase or suggested we talk about our budget, I felt more and more suffocated. It was like the very things I had found endearing about him, his practicality, his simple way of living, were starting to feel like chains. Looking back now, I can see how everything was building up. Every skipped family dinner, every hidden purchase, every little lie about where I was or what I was doing. They were all bricks in a wall I was building between us. But at the time, I honestly thought I was just protecting myself, protecting my right to live my life the way I wanted. I had no idea how quickly everything was about to fall apart. It all came crashing down one Tuesday evening. I'd just gotten back from a teacher planning session. It was actually a shopping trip with Jessica, when I found Peter sitting at our kitchen table with this stack of papers in front of him, credit card statements, all 3 of them, nearly $115,000 worth of debt he knew nothing about. I tried to play it cool at first. Oh, those old things. I was going to tell you about them. But Peter just sat there flipping through page after page of purchases. Target hauls, Amazon orders, that cute boutique downtown. It was all there, laid out in black and white. He looked defeated, not even angry, just tired. Then he started asking questions. What about the story I'd told him about helping one of my struggling students' families? That was a lie. I'd actually used that money for a weekend trip with Jessica. What about the medical bills I'd claimed were from dental work? Another lie. That money went to a designer bag I'd been eyeing. Each lie I'd told unraveled one by one, exposed. I did what I always do when I feel cornered. I turned it around on him. Well, maybe if you weren't so controlling with money, I wouldn't have to hide things, I remember shouting. Do you know how embarrassing it is to have to ask permission to buy basic things? How humiliating it is to have your sister comment on every purchase I make? Peter suggested counseling, but I shut that down immediately. In my mind, counseling was for people with real problems, not for couples arguing about money. Besides, Jessica had been telling me how her cousin went to marriage counseling, and it just gave her husband more ammunition to control her. Financial abuse. That term kept repeating in my head. The more I obsessed over it, the more certain I became that I was right. A sense of reckless abandon took over, and my spending habits went into overdrive. It was almost a game, daring Peter to react. I'd parade shopping bags into the apartment, strategically placing them for maximum impact in the living room. When I caught that familiar, disappointed look on his face, the one that made my skin crawl, I'd casually remark about how someone had to enjoy life, or scoff, "I refuse to live like we're perpetually broke." Inevitably, his family started to pick up on the tension during those dreaded Sunday dinners. I'd subtly, or not so subtly, aim barbs at Peter's job or his wardrobe, always masking it with a laugh, a flimsy shield in case anyone dared to call me out. "Oh, honey, that shirt again? Guess the Postal Service isn't as lucrative as I imagined." His mother's lips would thin into a disapproving line. His sister would roll her eyes so dramatically I thought they might get stuck. But Peter, frustratingly, would just plaster on that lopsided smile and steer the conversation in a different direction. Jessica, of course, thought it was hilarious. "Girl, you're just speaking the truth," she'd cackle when I recounted these moments. "If he can't handle a little teasing, that's his issue." But then there were those late nights when I'd catch Peter gazing at our wedding photos with this unreadable expression in his eyes. It sent a cold wave of guilt through me, but instead of confronting the root of it, I'd bury myself in Instagram, liking endless posts about knowing your worth and refusing to settle. It was such a bizarre charade. We still exchanged "I love yous" every day, still curated a picture-perfect couple facade online, still mindlessly went through the motions. Yet beneath the surface, something was brewing, a pressure steadily building like in a shaken soda bottle. I could feel it with every furtive glance Peter gave our bank statements, every lie I told about a purchase, every judgmental stare from his family across the dinner table. But I honestly didn't foresee the explosion being as destructive as it was. It was supposed to be another typical Sunday dinner at his parents' place, one of those obligatory family gatherings I usually tried to avoid, but Peter had been uncharacteristically insistent. His sister, Sarah, was droning on and on about her new house, and somehow the conversation veered, as it always did, toward us. "So, when are you two planning to buy?" she asked, wearing that sickeningly sweet, innocent face. I was already a couple of glasses deep into the boxed wine his mom always served, wine I normally wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole, but tonight I desperately needed something to get me through the evening. Peter cleared his throat, his voice a little too loud. "We're actually holding off for a bit. Need to get our finances in order first." The way he phrased it, as if he was making some grand announcement, made my cheeks burn with humiliation. His mother, bless her oblivious heart, tried to offer some advice. "You know, when Peter's father and I were first starting out, we used this envelope system for budgeting. Maybe I could show you—" "Oh, suddenly everyone's an expert on our finances, is that it?" The words escaped me, sharper and more biting than I intended. I reached for the wine glass again, but Peter's hand shot out, intercepting it before I could take another sip. "That's enough," he said, his voice laced with a steeliness I rarely heard. "Sit down before you say something you can't take back." Maybe it was the wine loosening my inhibitions. Maybe it was the acute embarrassment of the situation. Or maybe it was just years of simmering resentment finally reaching a boiling point. But something inside me snapped. I yanked my arm away from him, pushing back from the table, my chair screeching against the linoleum floor. Or what? What exactly will you do? I could hear my voice rising, but I was powerless to stop the torrent. You know what? I don't even need you. Just look at you. I could have had anyone, but I settled for you. You're not even that funny, you're just ugly. The room fell into a stunned silence. I turned to his mother, who was sitting there with her mouth agape. Sorry, but someone had to say it. Everyone thinks it. You think I don't notice how people look at us? The mailman with his crooked teeth and his pathetic dad bod? Peter didn't shout, didn't try to argue. He just stood up, grabbed his keys and wallet from the counter, and said in a flat, unfamiliar voice, "Find your own ride home." And then he walked out, just like that. The silence after the door slammed shut was deafening. His sister, Sarah, muttered something under her breath that sounded suspiciously like, "Finally." His mother was quietly sobbing. His father refused to make eye contact. I stood there swaying slightly, the weight of what I'd just done beginning to dawn on me, but my idiotic pride wouldn't allow me to backtrack. "He'll come back," I announced to no one in particular. "He always comes back." But even as the words left my lips, a knot of dread tightened in my stomach. This time felt different. I'd undeniably crossed a line, and everyone in that dining room knew it. I ended up summoning a rideshare to get home. The driver kept stealing glances at me in the rearview mirror as I alternated between leaving a string of angry voicemails for Peter and smearing mascara all over my shirt from crying. "Men, am I right?" I tried to joke, attempting to salvage some semblance of dignity, but he just cranked up the volume on the radio. When I finally arrived home, the apartment was shrouded in darkness. He was just gone. No Peter. No note to explain. No goodbye. I told myself it was temporary, a cooling-off period. He'd be back in the morning, I reasoned, and we'd smooth things over like we always did. But deep down, a cold dread started to form inside me. I was so wrong. The next few days are a jumbled mess in my memory. Unanswered calls echoed in my ears. Desperate texts hung in the digital void. I was all over the place, from angry Facebook posts railing against toxic families, his of course, to endless tearful rants to Jessica about how Peter was twisting everything, manipulating the situation. There were voicemails filled with apologies, followed by me retracting them in the very next breath. I even drove past his parents' house twice, hoping to catch a glimpse of his car, some sign he was still nearby, but nothing. Then came the email from the bank. Peter had separated our accounts. Just like that, with a click of a mouse. All the automatic payments for my credit cards bounced, one after another. The cold, hard reality smacked me right in the face when I finally sat down and compared my teacher's salary to my ever-growing mountain of monthly bills. The numbers didn't even come close to adding up. I tried to do damage control on social media, crafting this long, carefully worded paragraph about growing through hardship and choosing myself. Jessica helped me make it sound like I was the one who'd walked away from a negative situation, the one who was empowered. The likes and supportive comments started rolling in, but they felt hollow, empty calories that didn't satisfy. At school, I started to feel like an outcast. People would suddenly stop talking when I walked into the teacher's lounge, their conversations abruptly cut short. One day, I overheard two teachers whispering, "Can you believe what she said to him in front of his whole family?" Apparently, Sarah had been busy spreading the story of my wine-fueled meltdown to anyone who would listen. My friends started disappearing. First, it was the couples we used to hang out with. Suddenly, they were too busy for our regular wine nights, booked solid with other commitments. Then some of my single friends started making excuses too, their schedules mysteriously filling up. I kept telling slightly different versions of what happened, and I guess the stories didn't quite match up. Even Jessica started acting distant and weird after I couldn't afford our usual shopping sprees anymore. In desperation, I even reached out to Peter's mom, of all people. I sent this long, rambling text message about how sorry I was, how I'd had too much to drink, how I didn't mean any of it. Her reply was just 2 words: "Please don't." The apartment felt impossibly huge and empty without him. Stupid, insignificant things would trigger these overwhelming waves of sadness and regret. His coffee mug sitting in the cabinet, his favorite spot on the couch, the silly magnets he'd collected from his mail route travels clinging to the refrigerator. But what could I say to make it right? Sorry I called you ugly in front of your mother? Sorry I maxed out secret credit cards and then blamed you for being controlling. Sorry I treated your kindness like it was some kind of personal weakness. Then, the official letter arrived. Peter's lawyer contacted me about the divorce proceedings. It was really happening. All those times I'd threatened to leave, all those times I'd said I didn't need him. I never actually thought he'd be the one to walk away. The lawyer mentioned something about irreconcilable differences. A polite, legal way of saying your wife turned out to be a lying, spending, drunk mess who humiliated you in front of your entire family. And the worst part of it all? Some nights when I couldn't sleep, I'd lie awake and realize that everything I'd accused Peter of being, controlling, holding me back, not being good enough, it was all just smoke and mirrors, a way to justify my own bad behavior. He hadn't controlled me. He'd tried to protect us. He hadn't held me back. He'd tried to keep us from drowning in debt. And that ugly guy with the crooked smile? He was the only one who'd ever loved me exactly as I was, flaws and all. But by the time I finally figured all this out, it was too late, way too late. It's been a year since everything fell apart. I tell everyone I'm living my best life now. That's what you're supposed to say, right? I post these carefully staged photos of my tiny studio apartment, calling it my cozy sanctuary, or whatever catchy phrase is trending. I make these TikToks about financial independence and healing from financial abuse, careful not to show the ramen that I'm eating for dinner. Between pretending to be happy and thriving, the truth is, I'm barely keeping my head above water. Every paycheck is meticulously divided down to the penny between rent, minimum credit card payments, and basic necessities. I even had to sell half my designer bags just to scrape together the security deposit on this place. But hey, at least I'm making all my payments on time now, right? That has to be a step in the right direction. Growth, I whisper, the word feeling hollow even to my own ears. That's what I tell myself anyway, especially after I post some inspirational drivel online about my healing journey. But last week, the universe decided to laugh right in my face, making all those carefully curated posts feel like a pathetic lie. I was at Price Rite, the only place I can stomach shopping these days because, let's face it, designer bags don't pay for organic kale. And there they were, Peter and some girl. Someone I'd never seen before. She was the antithesis of everything I thought he'd be attracted to. No Louboutins, no expertly tousled waves, just a simple cotton dress and this genuine, beaming smile. I instinctively ducked behind the boxes of Cheerios, peering through the gap, watching the way he looked at her. God, he used to look at me like that. They were laughing about something silly, and I noticed she wasn't bothered by his slightly crooked smile or his dad bod. In fact, the way she gazed at him, it was like she'd won the lottery. Later that night, driven by some self-destructive urge, I did what any modern woman would do. I stalked them online. Turns out, Peter met her about 7 months after our divorce papers were signed. She was a cashier at some local grocery store, living in a dilapidated apartment complex on the wrong side of the tracks. I always feared I would be the one to drag him down, but instead, he seemed to be pulling her up. He encouraged her to go to community college, helped her with her homework for God's sake. Now she's got a job at a bank, entry level, sure, but with actual upward mobility. They moved in together a few months back, and Peter, he finally got that route supervisor position at the warehouse, the one I used to mock him for wanting because it wasn't ambitious enough for my taste. Then the final crushing blow. I saw a picture of her wearing an engagement ring. Tiny. Probably cost less than one of my monthly manicures, but in every photo I've obsessed over, and trust me, I've seen them all, she looks at that ring like it's the Hope Diamond. Meanwhile, I'm sitting here in my perfectly decorated apartment, a prison of my own making, wondering if I can justify ordering Thai food or if it's another night of ramen noodles. All my perfectly crafted social media posts about thriving and self-improvement suddenly feel like some sick joke. Peter's actually living all the things I was pretending to do. Building a real life, helping someone blossom, being genuinely happy. The worst part is, I can't even bring myself to hate her. She's not some perfectly sculpted trophy wife or a high-powered CEO. She's just real. She appreciates him in all the ways I should have, but was too consumed with my own image to notice, and he's giving her the life I threw away because I was too busy chasing some superficial fantasy of what I thought my life should look like. So yeah, that's my story. The one about how I flippantly said, "I don't even need you," to probably the only person who ever truly loved me for me. Not the filtered, airbrushed version I projected on Instagram. It's the story of how I discarded a good man because I was too busy playing dress-up to recognize what was genuine. Would I take it all back if I could? Maybe. Probably. But that's not how life works, is it? Sometimes you don't realize what you've lost until you're sitting alone with a bowl of instant noodles, watching the person you hurt build a beautiful life with someone who appreciates their worth, crooked smile and all.